Long ago, when these ancient Grecian temples were new, hemp was already old in the service of mankind. For thousands of years even then, this plant had been grown for cordage and coarse cloth in China and elsewhere in the East. For centuries prior to about 1850, all the ships that sailed the western seas were rigged with hempen rope and sails. For the sailor, no less than the hangman, hemp was indispensable. A 44-gun frigate, like our cherished old Ironside, took over 60 tons of hemp for rigging, including an anchor cable 25 inches in circumference. The Conestoga wagons and prairie schooners of pioneer days were covered with hempen canvas. Indeed, the very word canvas comes from the Arabic word for hemp. In those days, hemp was an important crop in Kentucky and Missouri. Then came cheaper imported fibers for cordage, like jute, sisal, and manila hemp, and the culture of hemp in America declined. But now, with Philippine and East Indian sources of hemp in the hands of the Japanese, and shipment of jute from India curtailed, American hemp must meet the needs of our Army and Navy as well as of our industries. In 1942, patriotic farmers at the government's request planted 36,000 acres of seed hemp, an increase of several thousand %. The goal for 1943 is 50,000 acres of seed hemp. In Kentucky, much of the seed hemp acreage is on river bottom land such as this, along the Kentucky River Gorge. Some of these fields are inaccessible except by boat. Thus, plans are afoot for a great expansion of the hemp industry as a part of the war program. This film is designed to tell farmers how to handle this ancient crop, now little known outside Kentucky and Wisconsin. This is hemp seed. Be careful how you use it. For to grow hemp legally,
Hi, welcome everyone. Thanks so much for coming out. It's really great to have such a big turnout and so much curiosity about hemp in our valley. This event this evening is sponsored by Volga and the Learning Council. We're sponsored by Volga and the Learning Council this evening, and we offer this on the gift model, which we really appreciate you all for participating in our gift model, which helps to build more classes and more community events and experiences. Coming up, we have some more collaborations, including on Monday, the 19th, right here at the Paradise. Lloyd Nelson will be teaching about biodynamics in a class called Regenerative Agriculture. So it's going to be super great and fun and lively, so please come out again in 2 weeks. And
my name is Emily Hartnett. I'm the president of the Ballard Unit Growers Association. I'm also a livestock farmer here in Paonia. And the movie we just saw is called Hemp for Victory. This is, you can continue watching it on YouTube, Hemp for Victory 1942. It's a 15-minute film, and we'll probably maybe have a hemp film showing this summer too, where we'll show it again. So you can go home and watch it tonight on YouTube. It continues to talk about processing of hemp back then in the 40s, so it's a really interesting film. And we'd love to thank the Paradise Theater for having us here tonight, and Erin, who's helping us with all the tech stuff, so thanks so much. And, we're really happy to have this event here tonight, and this is an amazing showing. This is really great to have this community come out. We're also live streaming the event on Facebook. So thank you to Jim and Elaine for handling that. And we'd like to bring Carla up to the stage right now. Carla is a pioneer hemp advocate in the North Fork Valley. She's going to give a brief history of hemp in the valley.
Well, I can't see you guys, and it's a good thing because, you know, you're all sitting out there in your underwear. You know, when you take a course in public speaking, that's the first thing they tell you. Just pretend like everybody's naked. You'll get by. Anyway, Hemp in the Valley. Somebody from, I can't remember who it was, from Carbondale came over in about 1995, because this information that I have is that old, and got us interested over here in hemp, because we had the Grange going and everything, and so we thought, well, we'll take that on. Well, for 3 years, we messed with it, and we had a lot of good people doing hemp in those days. Senator Ted Casey in the legislature, Representative Kay Alexander, who did a lot of work. Steve Aquafresa did a lot of work. I mean, they were really trying to get it. Farm Bureau was behind it, believe it or not. And, but they could not get it out of the legislature. They put in bills, out they'd go. So finally, after about 3 years, we just said, oh, well, you know, what are you going to do? But that was 25 years ago. We have a new generation of people. We have new ideas, that we know a lot more. Even CU is going to oversee the whole project, CSU. And so that's kind of the way it was. It went on for a few years there, trying to get it done, and it just wasn't going anywhere. But now it's revitalized. We got new people, we got younger people coming in, and smarter people. If we could just get through the legislature and get it done. And even, we had the wafer board plant down in Olathe at that time. We were making wafer board. And some of our people went over and talked to them and said, you know, you guys ought to be making this stuff out of hemp. And they were interested. And the government said, no, you can't. Can't do that. So that ended that, and Louisiana City sold out. But they would have done it. I mean, we had so many opportunities in those days, but we just didn't have enough millionaires behind us to get it done, which is what it takes, because there's a lot of opposition to anything that comes on the market that might hurt lumber. Can you imagine the trees that would be saved if we did hemp? I mean, and an international paper wrote Kay a letter, Kay Alexander, and said, we're behind you. We'll use it. So we really had it going for us then, but we could not get it done. So I'm just hoping that with all the information that we've gleaned over the years and all of the new computers and stuff and everything we've got, that this time we can make it go. What do you think? Well, we have to get behind the legislatures and get it done. 12 states at that time wanted to do it, and they had the same trouble we did. Couldn't get it out of the legislature. 12 states. So we were buying it from England and Germany, Canada. We get our stuff from Canada. I've got about 5 or 6 tapes at home just on all the clothes they made and how they did it. And one of the films that I have shows them cutting the stuff with a swather and baling it. And I mean, it seemed pretty simple on the tape. But anyway, it can be done. We have the young people and the brains to do it. We just got to get some big fat ones off of their butts in the legislature and get it done.
Okay, so we're very red wine.
Let's have a party.
I'll take this.
Yeah, we don't want to fall down and break things up. Okay, may I now leave?
Thank you so much.
We're so grateful for the work that's come before and also for the work that's to come. So thank you all for being here. And how many people in the audience are from Paonia? Woo! All right. Awesome. Good. Well, I just wanted to remind you all that there is an opportunity to vote coming up, and I hope that everyone will come out and vote so we can get some county commissioners and some folks in office locally here that will really support this kind of forward-thinking work. Thank you.
We're going to show one more brief clip. Is that coming out? And this is a melodrama that Carla directed and Paonia directed.
Sherry Gilcrease
Okay.
wrote it and directed it.
Okay, it's a melodrama and it's about hemp. So this, what year was this, Carla? 1990 something.
Yeah, 95 or something in there. It was when we were doing all this.
So somewhere in 95, they put on a melodrama with some, you'll recognize some local people from 20 years ago. So we're going to show a brief clip from that and then we're going to move into our panel.
Smoking, no, he can't.
To the audience. So you guys are running the show tonight. So if you have some questions, you can think about them, you can write them down. Please be clear and concise with your questions. We obviously can cover a lot tonight, so this is very exciting. And if you do have a question, once we open it up for questions, you can come up here. There's going to be a microphone right there where you can ask your questions. So thanks again so much everyone for coming. I'm really excited to introduce our panelists. We'll start with Terry. Terry Moran, you can come up. He's from the Colorado Department of Agriculture. So we're really lucky to have him here tonight, coming all the way from the Front Range. And Terry has worked for the Colorado Department of Agriculture in the newly created position of Industrial Hemp Certified Seed Specialist. He's been in this position since December of 2015. He has a BS in agronomy from the Colorado State University, and he's been a career seedsman as a plant breeder, assistant plant breeder, product manager. Purity and multiplication manager. The majority of his career was spent in the vegetable seed industry, breeding sweet corn, with additional roles working with strawberries, tomatoes, and small grains in Colorado, California, Idaho, and Florida. So thanks so much for being here tonight, Terry. Our next panelist is Brian Stratton. Brian is a local grower here in Crawford. Thanks so much, Brian. Brian moved to the North Fork Valley about 4 years ago, and he's been experimenting with various size hemp plots for the last 3 seasons. Brian is navigating the hemp scene and figuring out how to make it work sustainably, both agriculturally and financially. So thanks for being here, Brian. Next panelist is Ty Odell. Ty is also a local here in Hotchkiss. His business is the Western Soap Extraction. It's a family-operated facility located on Rogers Mesa. The Western Soap Extraction provides ethanol extraction services for the North Fork Valley and surrounding areas. Yay! They utilize a cold extraction process to produce high-quality crude oil that can also be decarboxylated. Other services include mixing crude oil with the carrier oil for custom dilutions. So thank you so much for being here, Ty. Our next panelist is Elliot Brown. Elliot is also an agronomist with a degree in plant genetics and plant breeding from Purdue University. He's been involved in cannabis for over 20 years and has been involved with commercial agriculture on multiple levels. He's a published author and has articles in the Journal of Genetics from Purdue University. He has articles in the Journal of Genetics as well as several research presentations on multiple topics. He's been certified as an expert witness in an arbitration hearing involving hemp dispute. So you're a good guy to have on the team, huh? as a consultant since moving to Colorado 8 years ago, and he plans to bring modern biotechnology to industrial hemp, as well as use our resources such as a tissue culture lab and processing facilities to reduce the barrier of entry for the farmer. So that's great. That's some great. And our final panelist is Dawn Vrabel. And thanks so much for being here, Dawn. Dawn co-founded the Authentic Hemp Company after finding her own healing on the founding premise of bringing integrity, purity, and authenticity to the hemp industry from seed to product. Authentic Gardens is a high country hemp company that biodynamically cultivates industrial hemp and is registered in the Colorado Industrial Hemp Program. Dawn formulates for Authentic, which extracts and offers effectively focused hemp products. Dawn also has an extensive background in clinical herbalism, health and wellness, and biology. Dawn holds a pre-med track BS degree from Colorado State University in developmental genetic biology and has a history in lab genetics nutrition with a solid foundation of biological knowledge. Thank you so much. And thanks to Alicia, too, for helping organize this panel. This wouldn't have come together without Alicia. So. Okay, so I'm going to start off with a question for each panelist, and then it's up to you. So start thinking of your questions. So Terry, I'd love to start with you. Basically, a general introduction. If a farmer would like to get going with hemp, where do you start? What are the permits, the regulations? Where do you find seed? Things like that.
Okay. Last time I tried to turn this on, we had a little bit of feedback issues. So we want to try it again, or can people hear me? Yep.
Is yours?
Yeah, I just left it off.
Okay.
So can people hear me okay?
Yeah.
So, well, if you want to be part of the CDA program, the first thing you should do is go to the Industrial Hemp webpage or to the Colorado Department of Agriculture webpage and, read the rules of the Industrial Hemp program so you know what you're signing up for. It is a regulatory program, it's a voluntary program, and there are certain rules and reporting structures in place. So that's the best thing to do is, read the rules, what you're getting yourself involved with. And then there's an application process there's a checklist, and of course paying your fees and all that part of it. So, I travel around basically for the department. It's Maureen West is a program manager, and Dwayne Sinning is a program director. And we have Jessica Quinn, that's the admin that basically handles all the processing of application forms. And I lend a hand with those guys when they need anything done, basically. So, I have, I know what's going on in the program. If you have specific questions, I can answer them. Usually I do like a little canned presentation that is generally, 30 to 45 minutes, so I'm not going to go on and on about it. But the best thing to do is to go to the webpage and read the rules, and then if you want to participate in the program, there's an application there and a whole bunch of instructions how to fill the application out properly. Most people like to hear about numbers. I checked them the other day. I have the exact numbers if you need them, but right now there's probably close to 13,000 acres registered in the state. And of that, there's probably close to over 600, I'd say, approaching 600 registered land areas. That's for outdoor and indoor, and there's something like 69 acres of indoor greenhouse space registered currently. So, of course, the whole market basically is CBD, probably 80 to 90% of it, with more and more people also coming in with grain. The fiber deal, you guys probably know much about that as I do. And it's coming along, but by and large, it's all about CBD. So we can talk more about the Certified Seed Program if specific questions come, but it's a pretty good start.
Great, thank you, Terry.
Emily, would it be possible to bring up the lights a little bit so we can take notes?
Sure. Can we bring up the lights, Erin, so people can write on in their notebooks? Thank you. Thanks for the suggestion. Okay, so Brian, I have a question question for you. Brian's been growing hemp around here for a couple years now, and my question for Brian would be, is our local climate favorable for growing hemp? What are some of the challenges you see as a hemp farmer? Maybe you could discuss water use, inputs, just in general. What's it like to be a farmer here for hemp?
Well, it's great. I love this area. I love the people. Obviously, we're in the best place in the world. But, so hemp does run into October, November, so you do have to make sure that you have enough water. In October, November, the temperatures are lower, so you don't have to water as much, but there is potential for the need for that. So there is drip system, you can do furrow irrigation, cover crops. Plastic is really popular right now. I recommend cover crops. But yeah, so you do have to watch out for that, and especially this year, if you're on a shared ditch system, maybe check the mountains or your local ditch company and see if that's going to be a problem for you. Again, you could probably do some kind of reserve water system, maybe a pond, and then do kind of a drip system deal so that you can have a better future prospect.
And what about inputs or fertilizer? How's the soil around here?
The soil is great, unless you just totally destroyed it with tillage. It is great though. We're in a seabed, what I've heard, and it's ancient, and there's lots of minerals left. And yeah, like with the cover crop system that we've been doing a white Dutch clover in the spring, and then in the fall you can pitch like something like an oats. To the weeds is the biggest problem, one of the biggest problems. So because everything's hand done, so when you do like something in the fall, we pitch like an oats, or like that'll die in the winter. It just grows out, covers the ground, dies. You don't have to worry about it. If you do something like a winter wheat, not the winter wheat, but like a cereal wheat, that'll grow over the winter. The only problem with that is that in the May, you're going to have to cut the heads down to create a cover without it going to seed, and then you're going to have to wait about 30 days to plant because it has so much carbon.
Great, well, thanks, Brian. And question kind of in between you two. When it's time to harvest, what does that look like for harvesting the hemp?
So the thing about going big with this deal is that you have to either do it by clone, and that requires you to grow your own clones, or purchase clones, and usually they're about $10, so you're going to spend about $10,000, $15,000 in clones if you don't do clones yourself, which you can. And the other option is seed. The seed right now is kind of variable. The Department of Ag does have a certified seed program, but you're trying to get, the game is trying to get the highest ratios of CBD to THC. It's an ongoing dilemma because you're trying to catch the 0.3%, which is a very low percentage of THC. And if you go over that, when they test you, then you have to cut your crop down. Oh, so the harvesting deal. Okay, so it's all done by hand. I've seen combine stuff. The extraction is much lower when you do go to extract it. If you're turning it into raw oil, if you want to sell flour that's combine harvested, it's not very procured. Everyone wants the highest, best flour. So you do have to harvest by hand, hang it in somewhere. You need a drying facility that can handle whatever acreage you're doing. And then you do have to strip the flowers from the stalk by hand.
So that sounds pretty labor intensive.
Yes, the planting and the stripping and the harvesting is definitely both labor intensive, and I think it's the biggest limiting factor to going big in the CBD hemp.
Great, thanks, Brian. Ty. So Ty, as you heard, his family's in the extraction business. So what is the extraction process like? And if you could describe a little bit your processing facility and what you do with the plant once it's harvested and how you deal with it.
Well, like Brian said, you know, the hardest part's probably harvesting it, drying it, and stripping it. Once you get that done, then you can bring it to us and we'll start our extraction process, which we use ethanol. We chose that, just, I don't know, full spectrum, and we thought that'd be a good way to go. Most people around this area wanted ethanol extraction, so that's what we chose. But we'll take the flower and the leaves, freeze them, and do a -0 degrees extraction process. And we don't do any warm extraction, just all cold, mainly to keep the chlorophylls out, the waxes out, and give a really clean process. And if anybody needs a decarb, we can decarb it, mix it, kind of whatever you want, depending on what anybody needs, or the customer needs.
And are there a number of processing facilities in the area, or is that a limiting factor as well? Do you guys get so busy that you can't handle any more? Or, I don't know if this is on, hopefully you can hear me.
Well, when we first started in this business, we got started because a lot of the farmers around here didn't have a place to go for extraction. We didn't think it was...
So there's a lot of conflict in the hemp industry between recreational and medical marijuana growers that don't want their crops pollinated, between grain farmers that can't have a crop without pollen, between CBD farmers that want, maybe I want to go with the other mic as well, the CBD farmers that want as little pollination as possible. So we're looking at using genetics and biotechnology to kind of try to solve some of these issues. We made about 400 crosses about this past season, with about 100 of them being for more of a columnar, non-bushy type plant, so we can work toward higher planting densities and mechanized harvesting, and there's ways to, in most standard breeding crops, there's male and female sterile breeding lines. So if we can figure out how to get those active in our breeding stock, then we should be able to develop lines that don't produce pollen, or lines that are not fertilizable on the female side, or both of those aspects in one line. So you won't impact your neighbors won't impact you, and you can get the type of crop you desire, instead of having somebody 2 miles away take your value down to 15% of what it could have been.
Okay, thanks, Elliot. That's exciting stuff. Cutting edge. Dawn, if you could tell us about your experience with producing hemp products and the market, and what that is like to go from growing the plant to producing a value-added product.
Sure. It's fun. Yeah. So before we looked at hemp, we started Authentic Gardens in 2016. I was a certified herbalist for over 10 years and had taught and practiced taking the plant from seed to skin. So that was a rhythm that I was comfortable with. And I think I actually walked around my first hemp expo shouting to the world that there were other herbs in the world. But it took me about a year of looking at the research and the evidence-based research versus the anecdotal stuff that is out there, and then just the claims that are out there, which they're all very different, to kind of land with authentic. And so we grow in Hotchkiss. We are one of 3 that are certified organic and biodynamic, and we did that for our farming and our regenerative practices that we hold in our hearts, but it's also because in this very nascent industry, there's a lot of gray areas and a lot of areas where quality can pour off, and the end consumer or customer would never really know that. So, for instance, I carry a binder around with me that is a good 2 inches thick of test results from flower to pre-harvest to post-harvest to crude to end product. And so the general experience and what we've seen with Authentic is that the market is very big. You have to have your niche. We focus on handcrafted, clean, using certified organic or biodynamic carrier oils and herbs, growing as much as we can, and then going through a cold alcohol extraction to retain the whole plant extract. We do work with whole plant extract versus isolate, which is a little bit more pharmaceutically focused. And I'd say to give some words to the market and the customers, it's hopeful. There's a lot of hope and there's a lot of excitement. This is definitely about the people's medicine, and I think that's why this room is this full. And I think it's about bringing integrity to it, and it's a very high consumer education product. So, you know, there's a few key questions that from an end consumer you want to be able to ask. And if you're doing products, you want to be able to have that conversation, which is, you know, how is it grown? How is it extracted? Can you read the ingredients? Will it work? And what are you paying for? And stay away from the fads. There's lots of fads out there. There's this gold rush mentality. And, you know, farming is farming is farming. And this is a fantastic crop for, you know, all the reasons that we're talking about. But there's a sense of grounding that I think has to happen in the industry, and like a flushing out of the fads. And, you know, let's stick to where the evidence-based research is coming in, and how do we support that?
Great, thank you. Thanks, Dawn. Okay, so we heard a little bit from each panelist, so now it's time to open it up to the audience questions. So please come on down to the microphone here and introduce yourself and ask your question.
I want to grow hemp. I have a couple of concerns. One is that you have to stay below 0.3% THC. So is the THC affected by your harvest date, late harvest, early harvest? And then the other one is there a quality difference if you use, like on 16-inch centers, which I've read, will crowd out weeds with hemp? So those are really the two questions I have, and I appreciate an answer. Thank you.
What are you growing the hemp for?
CBD oil.
Okay.
So.
Ryan or Terry, would you like to answer?
Sure. You know, I think the basic
seed, so less initial cost, but your yield will be about the same if you do 4-foot spacing. So what I've seen on the tests from Oregon is a 4-foot row and a 6-foot spacing between the plants for maximum efficiency.
A lot of that depends on planting date as well. If you get in late, you're going to want to bring your spacing in, maybe do a 5x5 or a 4.5. If you're planting at the end of June, if you're planting in the middle of May, then you're going to want a 6x6 probably.
Yeah, and if you're worried about going over in THC, it's not a bad idea to, about a month out, maybe send the flower in for some tests, get a baseline, and maybe every week send one in till you learn your genetics. And as for spacing, we've seen some great yields at around 5 to 6 foot spacing. Some of them been up to about 3.5 pounds a plant on that spacing. Yeah, we got cards with us. Cards are out front? Yeah, yeah, we got a guy back here and I have some with us.
We grew 30-inch centers with 12-inch spacing, but we used our seed and then we had to rogue the males. And I would second what Ty is saying about the testing and just getting to know your genetics. So we know our genetics and we trust it. And so we went tighter knowing that we were going to be roguing as well.
And that's what we did as well. We planted traditional seed, not feminized seed, and we had to pull about 6,000 males. So it's, you're going to do the labor at the beginning to make the clones, you're going to do the labor to pull the males, and there's a lot of a huge cost difference between cuttings and seed on the market.
I have one more question I forgot to ask. For a grower, can you get or test for THC, or is there somebody who will test for THC so you can see if you're getting close to? I'm worried about going over 0.3% THC and putting all the work in it and having to destroy the crop. Absolutely. So I'd like to know if there's some way I can kind of head that off the path.
All the state, all the metric labs, there's a metric process that's in the marijuana business, and they're legal to test THC for hemp growers now. Or a lot of times people that you get your clones from will give you X amount of free tests too.
Our company is working on bringing testing equipment to the valley. Currently it's 6 hours to Denver and 6 hours to Durango to get tested. So if we can bring that in and offer it as a service to farmers, that's as well as our own in-house breeding needs, that's something we hope to be able to do by the time it's needed this coming fall.
Yeah, the only problem with the metric labs is that you are going to have the tags for hemp. But there are several labs in Denver area that will test for you, no problem.
Yeah, if you go metric, you have to pay a $250 extra fee to be a part of the program to get the tags. There's labs that'll test without being metric certified. You can get tags as well through Veronica Carpio. So you can get tags, but there's labs that you don't have to pay that fee. They're not state certified, so they might be off. Who knows? Their process. They're not state certified, but they're pretty close from what I've seen.
If a lab deals with the recreational or medical cannabis industry, they can't test samples without a metric tag, where independent private labs can do what they'd like. So that's the biggest difference.
We are on metric and have used Phytotech and Nordic down in the Front Range, and not via metric. Altitude Consulting and Gary Brooks, who I think did most of the testing in Arizona for cannabis. And so, but I'm also excited about you setting up shop here locally. That's awesome.
Great, thanks. That's a wonderful question. Along those lines, I don't know, Terry, if you have any statistics, if you know what was the percentage of CBA tested industrial hemp in 2017 that passed the 0.3 THC limit. Is that something pretty common that happens?
I guess the way we've always thought about it and reported it is in number of failed acres.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
So what do you know that off the top of your head, the number of?
Oh, let's see.
Year?
I should know this. Yeah. I will say the vast majority of the failed acres are for people that are growing. They jumped into the seed business overnight. They have seed. They've grown it a few times. It open pollinates, and they're reselling that seed. And it's just a soup. It's not there's not a standard variety to throw it up against in most instances. And the vast majority of the acres are people that were growing grain, for grain, or growing seed. And they went to full maturity for seed quality or for grain quality. And those are the vast majority of the acres have gone hot. Most of the people that are in the CBD deal, they know what they're doing. They've been at it a while, and they are testing all the time, and they know what they're working with, and they're harvesting early. So I think there's 2 varieties that were almost 700, I think maybe 775 acres were over 0.3 this year. And it was down from last year, which was around, I think, 12 to 1,500 or something. Those numbers are in presentations on the CDA webpage if you want the exact numbers or anything.
What were the 2 varieties?
So, it's hard for me to talk in terms of varieties. I'm sure it is for you as well, because, if there isn't a reference variety and, there hasn't been any process behind it to prove it's a variety. There's several of them. There's probably 8 or 10 of them that were small, didn't add up to maybe 60 or 80 acres. And there were 2 of them. One of them was called Colorado Gold, which was a problem last year as well. And then a new one that we hadn't seen in the program before named Marquee. So.
Great, thank you. Some more audience questions?
Hi, my name is Dea Million, and I'm a hemp advocate as well. I was on the hemp road trip a couple of times in the last couple of years. And what I've noticed is, and my concern is in the next like 5 years from now, as some of the corn farmers and like Ola want to get into the seed market, what's going to happen with all of that pollen that comes up the valley and destroys the CBD or the marijuana crops? Like, is there any thought for regulations or for, regions that, plant certain cultivars? Any thought about that? I had a thought about it.
There's some, I've seen multiple groups trying to keep grain toward toward Kansas. But there's also quite a few people. There's 300 acres of a monaceous variety grown outside of Montrose that I don't think they were successful this year. But that is one of the things we want to look at is working on a genetic basis to make plants that cannot be pollinated for hemp. And so regardless of other people's activities, we won't be pollinatable. And that's not genetic modification, it's genetic editing. You change the instructions that tell things what to do as opposed to changing the things themselves.
But people will still probably take seed, not your seed, possibly, right?
We're working on several things. There's also mechanisms to reduce or eliminate THC expression. It's going to take us a few years to get it done, but we're trying to hit multiple points that will make our seed a clear choice. But if people want grain, that's not what we're focusing on, and that is totally different varieties.
From a regulatory standpoint, hemp is a statewide concern. Anyone can grow hemp anywhere in the state that they want to, regardless of, I think there's 3 counties that allow outdoor cannabis production, and they only have, allow hemp of female plants. But none of that's been litigated, and if someone were to go into the middle of one of those counties and grow hemp, they would probably lose a lawsuit. The counties would, because state law trumps county law. But the only thing in ordinances is if something's not zoned agricultural. But if something's not zoned agricultural, then you couldn't do hemp in one.
Another good situation would be, or solution would be, light depth greenhouses that are utilized to pull a crop in before there's pollen in the air. And I've also heard that quite a few farmers of the recreational and medical cannabis have had success with wet walls for humidification, eliminating a lot of the pollen or the pollination sets that they've had to deal with.
Personally, to make money off grain, you need big acreage, so I don't think anyone in this valley, if you're trying to make money off it, would go for a grain or a fiber type. So I'm not too worried about it. And then the biggest thing I'm worried about is the pharmaceutical industry. I personally am only planning on 2 more years before pharma takes over. I've just been hearing rumors. If the FDA puts it into Schedule 3, you can't grow it anymore, and it's not any kind of cannabis extract will be illegal for you. So that's the biggest concern in the long-term situation for me.
Thanks, Brian. Next question. I think he was next in line for a question.
Hi, my name's Jim Milsky, and I'm probably the enemy of the hemp oil industry. I'm really concerned with the fiber and the herd section of the plant, which that's planted, can even be cast spread planted, but probably 20 plants per foot. We're not really concerned about pollinating other crops. I mean, in that, and I think your statement about the fiber and herd not getting popular is not totally correct, because down in Alamosa there's a big movement to plant for the fiber and the herd, and there's decorticators that are necessary to make this crop viable, and there's a lot of benefit to that side of the plant as well. So I know what you're saying about the genetics, but what's that going to cost for planting? So there's quite a few questions, and also if does the state have certified seed for fiber and herd plants, or just CBD oil plants?
The only varieties that have been approved so far by the state are definitely grain and dual-use grain fiber plants. So there isn't a whole lot of seed in the state. It's a problem. But you do need a decorticator. I don't know how clean the process is. There's a little bit of hempcrete, going on. But past that, we're a ways off. But there is certified seed varieties available now, and what we need is people to produce certified seed within the state so that we have certified seed available for commercial sales. Because right now, because we've had very limited seed, it's a brand new variety, first time it was grown, so there's a little bit of seed available through one company, Fort Collins, New West Genetics. They have their variety they got through this year. So there's a little bit of seed on that, and then there's a Bilobreski from the Polish Institute that is rumored to be coming into the country, but the paperwork hasn't been filed yet, so we don't know about that one for this coming year. And the other ones, there's the guy that brought the other ones in, Italian varieties. There's a whole bunch of certified seed available in Kentucky, but it's in Kentucky, and according to the FDA, it's still illegal for seed or plants across state lines.
Thank you.
I want to throw in one answer to your question about impacting other people and pollen. I was in a discussion a couple days ago, and I think that fiber is definitely a huge possibility. I think that it needs to be looked into at harvest, either getting equatorial varieties that are extremely late in flowering so that you can harvest a fiber and a stalk without a flower that produces pollen, or harvest it, plant early, let your plants get, chest, waist high, harvest a shorter plant before they flower, and then you're also not impacting anybody but able to pull a fiber yield off your acreage.
Yeah, and I think for long term, fiber and seed is the way to go. But I think people want to make money off their 1 acre or 2 acres, and you're not going to make more than $1,000 an acre. I mean, in Montrose, they have a program they're trying to do building blocks, and he's promising $12.50 an acre. But with the CBD, you can make a substantial amount more, and I think that's what people are going for in the short term. But if you have large acreage and you're looking long term, fiber and grain is definitely the way to go, I think.
To interject as well on the short-term lifespan of this potentially with the higher CBD value profits, we have a lot of field seed that came off our farm. I've had inquiries that go back to India. We've had inquiries in Colombia. We've had inquiries in Mexico and El Salvador. And there's people actively trying to build the hemp infrastructure in companies with exponentially cheap labor, limitless labor, land, water, resources, but they're not there yet. We've got a couple-year jump on them presently. So, but who knows what the future holds. So I do agree that it could be, it could go for 5 years plus. It could be done after this season when GW Pharmaceuticals bill changes. It could really happen any way. But we do have a lot of international inquiry and a lot of other countries gearing up to get in on this. And right now we have a head start.
Thank you for your question.
I was going to ask about CBD, there's certified seed varieties. You explained that there's not any certified CBD seed varieties already. Is that correct?
Right. I think the only one I've heard about is 3.5%, and that's rumored. We haven't tested that. We don't test for that.
Sure. It just sounds like the main stumbling block is the THC levels getting like up to 3%, like or harvest issues, and just people's fear of not wanting to go over to lose their crop. And my question is, like, do any of us know where 0.3% came from? Like, where did that come from? Why are we? I mean, I know why we're abiding it, because that's the laws and that's the rule, and we abide by it. But like, Where did that come from? Like 0.3%, it seems arbitrary. Where did it come from?
Yeah, well, it's in the Constitution. If you voted on Amendment 64, you voted for it. So,
no, I understand
yeah,
that.
right.
That's in the law.
That goes back to I think the early 50s. Ernest Small in Canada. Yeah.
I think I've heard that it comes from France. They just threw it out, and it isn't arbitrary.
It's arbitrary.
Totally. And there are groups that are trying to get it up to 1%.
Could you give her a mic? Repeat. Microphone.
Yeah, it's my understanding that the 0.3 came from France, and it's an arbitrary number that they just threw out, and there are groups, and I think everyone should call their legislation and try to get the THC level to 1% at least, so that would help farmers.
Thank you.
My name is Weston Zapp, and I'm a registered hemp farmer in the Valley. My company's name is Loud Organics. And I was just I don't have a question so much as we offer propagation in our facility at our farm. And we sell clones for people that are looking to do different types of styles of field farming, mostly in CBD. But we have people asking us questions as far as like spacing and what they would recommend for that. But as far as like clone sales go, we sell clones from anywhere from $4 to $6 a clone. So as far as seed versus, I guess I do have a question as far as like seed versus clone sales that the state is behind. Are you guys working for like a feminized line that you're trying to get approved, or is it more only focused on the fiber side of things as far as going forward from there?
So the state doesn't get involved with that kind of thing at all.
So as far as like the end testing?
We don't do any research. We're not breeding.
Okay.
You know, if somebody owns a variety that they want to run into the program, then you just enter into the program. But your specific question, the answer is absolutely no.
Right.
The state isn't behind any of that. Nothing like that's going on.
Okay, so it's
no,
just
you know,
about being passed as far as...
It would have to be a true seed variety that is produced outside, because that's the way the association, official seed certifying agencies work. And it's just like certifying wheat or any other field crop.
Right.
So you're never going to get a greenhouse crop certified.
Right.
Feminized seed or something you're doing on a small scale.
Right.
It's just not set up to do that, and the department doesn't have the resources to do that. You know, I mean, you can design a program that might work, and then you have to cut it off at, okay, is that going to be 10,000 square feet? What about, the guy with 100 square feet who wants to do the same thing?
Right.
So that kind of thing is never going to happen. And the reality is probably people will breed varieties that they may not be the kind of CBD return that you guys are used to, but down the road you'll probably have stuff that's at least 10%, 8% with a true seeded variety. And that's probably the way it'll go, because the prices will crash. Who knows? I don't want to say those kind of things, but you can speak to that. And as far as the certified clone program goes, that'd be a great thing. But if we test a variety in the program and it fails, you can't grow it in Colorado. So if you had a certified clone program and people put their clones in and we had some way to track them, it would probably be every plant would have to have a tag. That sounds familiar. And
are they trying to do that in hemp as well? Right?
What, the certified clone thing?
Or a way to track it through genetics where they can do tissue samples to be able to test it?
There's nothing like that going on at the state level.
Okay.
Maybe at a university.
As far as the state is concerned, once a plant is tested through the state, like whenever they come out for an inspection, if it's tested and passed, is that then put into a database that says that it passes in the field? Or is it just go into the testing that just says it's passed and doesn't really go on to the next year?
Everything's independent. One environment, one test.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. More questions from, or did you want to speak to his question at all?
Hi, my name is Mike Vrabel, Authentic Gardens. I have a question for Terry. I was going to write you an email, so I figured I may as well ask you in this forum. Thanks for doing this, by the way. The question's around 0.3 to 1%. As I understand, that's probably a rigid rule. We'd have to go to the public to get that changed. But in Prop 64, there is discretion between 0.3 and 1% on a harvestable basis. Is there an unofficial position or official position on when discretion is exercised? And has that been done in the past? And then I guess B, would a farmer stating a extraction or lab that can do THC stripping in their crude oil, would this help the situation in any capacity? Thanks.
The answer to the last question is no. And the 0.3 to 1, if you read the rules, you would be eligible for a waiver as long as you show evidence of crop destruction. If you have evidence of crop destruction and you take the waiver within 10 days, then you're still allowed to participate in the program. If you choose not to do that, then it can be turned over to law enforcement. So that means county sheriffs. Does that answer the question? If you're over 0.3, basically, there's three criteria. The crop can't leave the registered land area. It can't enter the chain of commerce, and it can't be used for human consumption. So that's the way it's written.
Great, thank you so much, Terry. Next question.
Thanks a lot for a great evening. So for the future security of the state, I'm hearing that on the East Coast there's states looking at how Colorado is rolling out the hemp production, and say with this 0.3, the state of Georgia is increasing. It's going to be a lot higher THC content allowed. You as a representative of the state, if you could write the laws, what would you recommend we be doing? And then I also, we have some farmers here. If you could talk about the money potential this year, that would be appreciated, I think. And also just a pitch. We have some great women running for governor. We also have someone who has stood by the cannabis industry since the beginning. And I've known him since he was a teenager. So I'm pushing Jared Polis. Thank you.
That wasn't for me, was it? Yeah, that's kind of a big topic. What's best, what's right? I represent the state. I speak for the commissioner. Who speaks for the governor. So, the party line is, you follow the rules and all that. The reality is, this is Colorado in 2018. It's not the Deep South in 1937. And, probably the best thing would be to regulate the plant products and not the plant. But I doubt seriously you'll see that in my lifetime.
Does anyone else like to take a stab at his question?
You asked about money potential, correct? This year, currently, we're seeing kilos of crude anywhere from 4,000 to about 7,500 currently. Per kilo, yeah.
Flour of extract?
Extract. If you do a pretty good job, you'll end up about 20 pounds per kilo. We've seen anywhere from 20 up to 50, depending on how you grew, how early you harvested.
And the pounds are what Brian talked about, what's already been stripped off the stem.
Yeah,
the leaves and the flowers.
Yeah. So if you can do a good job, you'll probably come in 20 to 25 pounds of strip material per kilo.
And how many pounds per acre? How many?
So I have some numbers here. Okay, this is just theoretical because you have to take this with a grain of salt because things change dynamically every year. So all these numbers are subject to individual subjective growing conditions. So if you get 1,000 pounds per acre, which is definitely doable, up to 1,500 or less, when you process that into crude, Thai is getting about a 9% yield.
Yeah, and that totally depends on how well you grew. I mean, we've seen up to 13, 14, but average 8 to 10.
Okay, so 8 to 10, 9% crude, so you're getting 90 pounds of crude oil. You have to give Thai some money for that, which is 20% of your crude. That's if you can do a trade, which not everyone takes trade. They make you pay a fee. So you're down to 72 pounds of crude. And then when we turn it into distillate, the crude oil market, as Ty could attest, it's not the highestly sought after good. People want this thing called distillate or isolate, which is in the 97% pure range, so that they can get all the THC out, and then I think it's in a global market by the time you get to that. So it's more desirable. You're losing half of that when you go to distillate, so now you're at 36 pounds of distillate, which is still good, but then you have to pay another time to the extractor. So then you're losing 25% of that. So now you're down to 27 pounds of distillate. So that divided by 2.2 is 12.27 pounds, or 12.27 kilograms. And if you're getting 6,000 a kilogram, which I've heard, you can make $73,620 per acre. And so this isn't exact, and things are subject to change, so you have to keep that in mind. And this is perfect.
That number did not include your inputs, your time, weeding, your time.
No, this did not take any costs into account.
$4,000 an acre in plants.
This is gross. Gross.
Well, it's better than tomatoes.
We're currently working on a few things to help with some of the bottlenecks at the end of the day. There's a lot of window shoppers in the CBD market. There's a lot of people that have a line with an East Coast pharmaceutical family that owns a chain of grocery stores and pharmacies and wants 1 million kilos every month. And there's so much just brokers. There's 7 layers of brokers between a customer and a producer. And there's people working on bringing transparency to that. But the international market that he mentioned is very hesitant because the crude oil is often, as an intermediary product, it often has too much THC to be shipped legally. So that's when producing isolate and THC-free distillate comes into play, which is something we're going to try to offer as a service to the Valley as well. I just got back on Thursday night from California to tool up with some relatively extensive equipment to allow us to produce around 100 plus kilos monthly, and I also have working out details of a purchase order for that. So that would equate to about 300 acres of hemp for the year's supply for that contract. So we do have some potential things we're working on that will allow those products to enter the international market and leave the state of Colorado in a legal fashion.
But Ty does this extraction as well, and he's local. So, I mean, Ty can do the crude, and then you can pass it on to Elliot to do the distillate. So we're trying, I mean, ideally you can find everything in the valley in the future, from clone to sale. The sale thing is the biggest problem in my personal experience. You basically have to find your own person. If somebody wants to help you, they're going to try and get as much out of you as they can, which is kind of sad, but that's just how it goes. So if we could get some kind of broker, if there's somebody out in the audience who's really good at marketing and turns our valley into like some kind of community thing where it's marketable as a valley-wide large product kind of thing, that would be awesome. And
so what I hear you saying, Brian, is you don't necessarily just start growing hemp. You need a buyer, you need a connection, you need a relationship before you start.
yeah, if you already have a buyer, and some kind of contract already signed, that would be ideal for you, but I haven't found that yet.
Emily, we shoot for 800 to 1,000 pounds an acre, and we sell our kilos at 51.50. And something that's been really helpful is to have the end product line, because you're able to do those pieces of consumer education and talk about traceability and transparency and quality assurance. And having the vertical has been very helpful, because I think we're essentially sold out. And I don't know, Mike, if you have more numbers than I do, then you can share from our extraction piece. But I think that we planned on $3 to $4 per pound per percent. Is that right?
For this coming year.
For this coming year.
Per pound per percent CBD by trial.
So then 30, okay. So yes, I think we're all expecting the CBD market to stabilize, come down, and just treat it as any other business in that capacity. But I think what Brian is saying was, one of my questions to Emily for the panel was, what have been the biggest challenges to growing, or what would some of your biggest suggestions be to farmers or interested farmers? And it's definitely that bottleneck and lining up extraction before that seed goes in the ground.
Great, thanks, Vaughn.
I'd like to weigh in on what Brian said earlier about all the people trying to take a piece of your farm, because I get offers during the season, people trying to buy our entire crop that were insulting to me for the amount of effort I put in. I had somebody tell me they thought a farmer should earn $20 a pound, and I asked how many 100-hour weeks they've spent in their field, and they said none. And I said, well, come back when you've spent some time, and then tell me they should be $20 pounds. But what he said is absolutely right. There's people that want to take third to half of your product at every step in the game. And that's one of the things that Ty and I are trying to work in concert with, is he can produce the crude, and then I can process to the isolate for a service fee basis and offer the sale as a sale and link up the buyer and the seller, so I'm not trying to make a large commission off the sale. And Ty's not trying to make a huge commission off the sale, which allows the products to maintain a competitive price point if we have an integrated service fee structure that allows us to go from raw flour to a saleable product.
Right now.
Yeah, we're basically doing that because you guys will get bombarded by brokers offering you all kinds of prices, promising 100 kilo orders a month. So we're trying to get basically the sales in place. So if you guys grow and harvest, and we should be able to extract it and get it basically sold for you guys. That's what we're trying to do at a good price. So try to keep the brokers down, to keep more money in your pocket, basically.
Dana has a great idea, so she wants to know what a good name for the co-op would be.
Any more questions from the audience? We're getting close to our time, and so if you have some questions, please come up and ask them before it's too late.
I have a question.
Great.
Okay. This question is also just maybe to help inform the audience, but I'm still interested. So I was just wondering if anybody on the panel knew about the FDA and the process, that the pharmaceutical companies will come in on with the CDA, and if somebody could explain that to me, how that's going and how that works. And as well, the lawsuit that Hogan Law in Denver has with the DEA, and just to kind of bring us up to speed, and if that's gonna, and if anybody has any insights on how the pharmaceutical companies are gonna try to, inhabit some of the market, and if they can take the whole market or not. I don't know. I'm just exploring these options. I'm not trying to scare anybody, but I just want to know the, realistic sides of these stories.
From my understanding, it's primarily, this is from what Hogan told my employee at the San Luis Valley conference, that the GW Pharma bill is primarily primarily going to be focused on CBD isolates, and that full spectrum whole plant extract will still be legal to produce and sell. I'm sure that Terry can tell us more than on the inside with the CDA side, but that was my understanding, was that it's going to be strictly isolate, and the law that's in the Colorado legislature presently allows doctors to prescribe CBD products should the FDA make it legal.
That isolate is genetic manipulation?
No, it's purified CBD, pharmaceutical grade. Everything else is stripped out. 99.7+% purified CBD, and it does have a host of beneficial effects, but there's also a lot of documentation that shows the terpenes and other cannabinoids play a significant role in the efficacy.
But then if he's growing the pure isolate, he couldn't play in that market?
Well
that's just it's all hypothetical. Yeah.
I don't remember offhand. If you Google it, it's right there. I've got it in my phone. I can give you afterward. It's real short.
I've just read what other people have read. I don't have any clarification on any of that.
I went to a science conference on hemp, and there was a whole panel of FDA people there, and they don't really want to touch like the labeling of hemp, and they want the hemp industry to regulate themselves, come up and do their own regulation, kind of like the Organic Growers Association did in California. So that's kind of what's in play right now.
And then did they say anything about how the pharmaceuticals want to get in on the game and do the genetic manipulation stuff too?
No, they did not, but I heard a lot about the tobacco industry wanting to get into it as well.
Yeah. They're already there.
Can you guys talk a little bit about how much work it takes to do a hemp crop and about how many employees you would need for your season?
Thank you. That's a great question.
So it is a lot of work, like I said, when you hand plant and then when you hand harvest. It's the biggest two time consumers. We're planning on doing 3 acres, 2.5 acres with other people, kind of co-oping their fields so that, we have labor as well as you take care of your field, I'll provide the clones kind of thing. It is a lot of labor, and that's why I would recommend going small at first and really see. I've worked on a project in Montrose. They tried to do 230 acres, and the guy lost $1 million. So just go small and go slow and figure it out and then grow. So just see how it goes. It's better to go 1/8 of an acre really well than 1 acre that's done 1/8 of the acre as good. So
I've met some folks that, they went all in and did about 60 acres and were pulling males and doing everything they needed to do, but because they overextended themselves, they would have been better off with a 5-acre plot. They would have had more biomass. They got, I think it was 125 kilos off of 50 some odd acres. So when you're hoping for 20, 30, 40 plus, those aren't very good numbers. So that is something to consider. I mean, we spent a couple of weeks solid just pulling male plants. I spent about a week solid just topping plants. I mean, the workload, if you're not mechanized, is astronomical. And the mechanized tools that are out there, the corn planters, they're not engineered for hemp seed. They'll crack your seed. But for us, I would rather trust seed and pull males than try to over-exhaust cuttings, because people think that X amount of mom plants is going to produce all these cuttings, but they get worn out and tired and need regrowth time. And so many of the cuttings on the market last season were just, they never should have been taken. They were branches. They weren't cuttings. They were growth shoots. It was not not appropriate. So I'd rather pull the males than make the cuttings or trust someone else with my season. But the harvesting, we spent about 5 weeks harvesting our 3 acres by hand, cut it, drag it out of the field, hang it on the fence, move it to a dry shed, hang it up again, take it down, shuck it, bag it, de-seed it, it doesn't stop.
Would you like to talk
yeah,
about that?
we've learned to budget about $5,000 an acre, and that does not include the cost of our seed that's going back into the ground.
So 5,000 an acre on labor.
Labor, amendments, rent, compliance. And actually, I don't think testing is a part of that, and testing does cost. So, and we hand plant and hand harvest and rogue. And I would say that roller coaster of, you can't just expect, 2 people are going to consistently do your acreage like this, right? There's planting, and then all of a sudden when those weeds come up, they are up all at the same time, and they don't care if you have 2 people there or 20 people there. So we were really lucky. We have a team of about 15 that are all part-time, and we would do 1 to 2 field days, field care days a week in maintenance mode. And then roguing was when those males are popping, they're popping, and you're there. And then harvests, we probably went around the same time. We were doing staggered multiple harvests around 5 weeks. And then there's curing, and then there's everything else that keeps going.
To give you guys an idea of drying capacity, we left some stuff in the field to field dry to do testing to see if that's a viable option. But for now, this past season, we rented a 2,000 square foot building with 20-foot ceilings and put 36 remesh cages in them that were 8 foot tall and 20 foot in diameter. And we filled it almost 3 times off of less than 3 acres.
Wow.
So your drying infrastructure, we couldn't hang off the ceiling because it was a fruit refrigerator, but so we had to work from the ground up. We probably could have got maybe half again or as much in if we'd have been able to hang from the ceiling, but we didn't get our drying structure until a week before harvest, and it was quite stressful.
We were in the same boat and needed a minimum of 500 square feet per acre, double or triple lined.
So having a buyer and having a drying facility are things that a farmer should work out before they plant their seed.
And extractors.
And extractors.
But I would like to say, if you're an organic farmer, it's a pretty easy, you already know how much work organic farming is. So if you know how to do that and you're used to that, it's not that much more work, honestly. So.
Thank you. Personally, I've seen some amazing healing experiences for the children, especially. Could you please share with the audience some of the, we've talked a lot about money and growing, and, just some of your personal experiences with the healing properties, especially the CBD. Thank you.
Do you want to speak to that, Dawn, first?
Sure. So I have my own personal, but because of what I do, I get to share in others as well. So I came out of a nutrition and herbal practice, and generally speaking, there are some things that people come in that doctors can't quite do things about, and this is one of those special plants that I think is really intriguing for that reason. So personally, I was not really that convinced from a clinical standpoint until I went to some conferences, and my husband kept pushing me to do the research. And then it really took us growing our own in that first pilot year project and trying it on myself to see what were the analgesic effects. And so personally, the first day of my monthly cycle, I'm in bed, not functioning. Nobody talk to me, leave mommy alone, door closed. And that doesn't happen anymore. And so that was my first And then yes, I know people that have turned stage 4 around. Will I ever make the claim? Never. But it's around and it's happening. I think that as the science continues to flood in about what's going on, I mean, we know that the endocannabinoid system is one of right now we think the biggest receptor systems in the body, and we know there's CB1 receptors and there's CB2 receptors. We know THC is binding to them. We know CBD is not, but it's doing other things indirectly. We know it's affecting serotonin. We know people, there's sleep cycles involved with this. And because of the serotonin, anxiety, and stress, we know, MS and muscle spasms are being alleviated. I think that it's just, the evidence is just going to keep coming in, and we just, I don't know if Martha Montemoyer is in the audience. She is, she could raise her hand. She is a colleague and a dear friend of mine that trains medical marijuana professionals from doctors down to bud tenders, because they're on the front lines of this. And granted, this is a conversation, but there's a lot going out there, and I think there's a lot of practitioners that are licensed that can't do certain things because of their license, and hemp is going to be, it's a little easier to work with because it's not psychoactive, because of the levels of THC. And so I think that's a real gift, because I personally don't want to be stoned, and people want to be clear, and they want the pain relief, and that's an epidemic and opiate addiction in this world, for inflammation and pain and inflammatory cause pain. And so I think that there are some 5 or 6 really key things, and then that anti-tumor piece of CBG and CBD and maybe even CBCA, all these cannabinoids, they're research, it's going to go after it, and we're going to learn more and more and more. And I think I truly think it's a gift from God. And I see it every day around me when things get really hard and you're like, oh my gosh, I have to navigate this somewhat scary gray industry. It's the people that come back and say, I've never been without pain like I am now. So, or, whatever the stories are. So I think just asking and following the research is going to be really helpful.
Great, thanks, Dawn. Anyone else?
Yeah, we've seen a lot of good results, anywhere from arthritis, muscle pain. My wife was in a rollover a couple weeks ago and could barely lift her arm, and we gave her one pill, and pretty much her pain went away. And most recently, we got a good friend in Mancus that his sister has cancer. And her doctor called her up Friday and basically wanted to know why she wasn't dead. And they gave her 6 months to live, about 9 months ago. And he's been giving her high doses of CBDA, non-decarbed oil, and that's probably, they claim, what's keeping her alive. So we've seen many health benefits, just about everything you can imagine.
It's amazing, anti-inflammatory. I know several folks that do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and mixed martial arts and actually sell CBD anti-inflammatory products at the gym, only product behind the counter. I've personally been treating my mom's multiple myeloma, which is bone cancer, with cannabis for about 10 years. Her cancer will never qualify as remission, but her numbers qualify as remission numbers. And she's been on a wave where they climb a little and then they drop, and they climb a little and then they drop. And she's had 2 bone marrow transplants. I mean, she was not supposed to be here a while ago, and she's still here, and we're still treating her, and she's still having a fantastic life.
Okay, we have time. Barb, you have a question?
I have a quick question.
Okay.
There was some reference made to Alamosa growing herd for construction, and I'm interested in doing some construction. Does anybody know more specific information about that, like who and where? Yes?
You want to
come talk?
There's a couple on the Front Range. The main one that I would suggest is Melissa and Josh Raby. They're with Loveland Hemp Company, and they've built a couple of hemp homes outside of Fort Collins. And I think and then there's another, can't remember his name, but he uses he uses Portland hemp or Portland cement with the hemp, and that stops the fossilization period process. That when you mix hemp and lime together, it's an elliptical bond that starts the fossilization period or the fossilization process. So then in 60 years, your wall is limestone. It turns back into lime. Limestone. No, it turns into limestone. That wall will be there for thousands of years.
Melissa and Josh, great baby,
The Loveland Hemp Company.
And I think I heard about something called Hemp Works. It's also in Denver that's maybe processing fiber. No, nobody's heard that. Okay.
I have a company that I think everyone should know about. I've been very busy with Ukraine. And we have a company in San Francisco, and if you can get in touch with them, it really, for the Ukrainians, if the Americans reach out to them, it means a big, big difference to them. So it's Hempire, HEMPIRE.tech. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Elliot has a question for Terry.
Yeah, we can go down there if we need to. I got an email from the CDA a week or so back, and it was in reference to their non-certified seed providers list. I was wondering if you could elaborate a little more about that. And I have a lot of seed from our field, but that's my dilemma is it's not selected worked varieties or lines yet. So I'm not charging the same things other people in the market charge, but I'd like to get that out on the market. Do you guys refer people? Is that how that works?
So if anyone, is this still on?
Yeah.
So if anyone wants to buy seed, outside of the industrial hemp regulatory program, you have the Seed Act, which regulates all seed of any species, right? So if you want to sell seed in Colorado, there's rules in place that have been there forever, almost. And so now if you're selling hemp seed, you have to register with the state to be a seed labeler. And then all the rules of the Seed Act pertain to you. So
We've got our farmer laborer's license. Is there a list of people that have that?
So it's the list of people that sell seed. I get calls all the time. People want seed. That's what I do. Is you basically have to email the department and cite the Colorado Open Records Act and ask for the hemp seed labeler list, and then we send that to whoever asks for it.
Okay, well, definitely do that.
But we also send like that warning letter you might be talking about open source seed, to try to do some consumer protection stuff to tell you basically, you grow the seed, it's not certified, it's probably going to go over 0.3, and it's up to you to stay in compliance with the program.
What percentage of farms got tested this year?
So that number is going to change around year to year based on the size of the program and what the state legislature wants to do. So last year we tested about 75% of the acres.
Okay.
And of that, it sounds like a lot, but you can't have it both ways. And I'd say maybe 33% of the registered land areas were actually tested.
Okay.
So that's what you give up when you go for larger acres. And that's why a lot of people growing for seed, save seed, or growing for grain, are running into problems. So the other day, the last time I looked at the numbers, it was around 580 registered land areas, 600 now, I think. And of that, I want to say something like 90 of them were between a tenth of an acre and 1 acre. So like 90 out of 600. And then if you get to 2 acres or less, it's probably, instead of like 20%, it's probably pushing 35%. So what you have is a whole lot of very small growers that do all the same paperwork that the large grower has to do, and all the same paperwork blob for the department to sift through. And that's why it does take 30 days to get a registration, and the department is very short-staffed. So the more the applications go back and forth, the longer it takes to drain on the resources of the department, and the growers get frustrated. But it's just like do it right the first time, follow the instructions, and try your best to make it happen properly the first time. So.
Great, thank you. My question was in regards to all that because I have a lot of seed, and when we mentioned the co-op earlier, and what I'd really like to see is everybody come together as a community. I have enough seed that pretty much anybody that wants to grow can grow. We're not going to go mad large acreage until people have gone through proof of concept, but I'd like to form a co-op within the community so that the farmers that test hot don't lose their season, because that is a valid risk. So for me, I would give up 10% of my harvest, an arbitrary number, to make sure that I get something should I go hot. So that is something we'd like to look for, and we encourage people to reach out to us if they're interested in that.
Maybe this will be our last question for the audience. No, we have some more. Okay, we have a couple more questions coming from the audience, so please.
Yeah, my question relates to soils. Our soils are very high pH. I think ours test around 8. That ties up minerals, and usually they're also low nitrogen. So the question relates to supplements, and some crops you use foliar sprays like boron to set berries and stuff like that. So can you talk about what type of yield impact supplementing can have, or spraying can have? Just general farming as how you would maximize your hemp crop.
You really need healthy plants if you want to have a healthy crop. And with hemp, there's some academic literature that shows that if you over-fertilize with nitrogen and phosphorus, you can accelerate THC production. So our perspective was to spoon feed our nitrogen in. We used drip line, drip tape. We ran organic nitrogen, fish emulsion, humic powder, our boron, all through the drip line. We did a granular spread of calcium sulfates. We've got about 5% organic matter at our farm, so we're good there, and about 7.8 pH. But if you account for the pH availability of your nutrients and what's actually there versus what's the plants can actually use, I think you'll be fine at around 8. You just need to just spoon feed and don't follow the 100 pounds an acre recommendation. We were recommended 100 pounds an acre nitrogen because we tested below 7 ppm, and I put 19 pounds over all 3 acres and had next to no nitrogen deficiency throughout the season. So it's really spoon feeding it, keeping it healthy without pumping it so hard that it goes the wrong direction.
I've done it in the hayfield so far, so freshly turned over. I think if I take the organic approach, I just give it compost if you can. If not, soil really already provides, in my opinion. I think if you do like a clover cover, something like that, it does help, especially with the weeds. The weed situation is the biggest thing for me. The cover crops really help with that. I really didn't do much, and it turned out really fine. So, the first year we just totally flooded it. I would come back to her place, and she just left the gates open, and it's just like a marshland. But they turned out fine. So I don't really think it takes that much, honestly. Especially if you already have an established garden or established organic farm that you've already been putting organic material into year after year. It's just an easy switch over. Yeah.
One thing, when he's on water, one thing that really amazed me about our season, we're on Fire Mountain Canal water, and they had to do some maintenance to the reservoir. So our water was shut off September 15th, which was pretty scary because we didn't have a huge flower set at that point. But our plants, we disconnected all of our drip lines and allowed the field to flood downhill to saturate as much as we could about a week prior to our water shut off. And everything stayed alive, and a little bit of wilt, but all the flowers stayed alive. For the full 3 weeks we were harvesting, and we still had live plants that were not dried flower 67 days after our water was cut off. So I think that from my initial perspective, I was way more concerned about it than it ended up needing to be.
And we tested high pH as well in Hotchkiss and did some soil analysis and consulting with U-Level, and then worked with Lloyd Nelson, who is a fantastic, I call him the biodynamic specialist, and I would highly suggest coming to his talk. And so he and Mike worked a lot on, he was working on the biodynamic sprays, so there's a lot of aerials out there during the full moons, and then we top dressed spoon, small amounts like you're saying, Elliot. And then Mike worked a lot on the fermented plant extracts with comfrey and horsetail and grabbing the silica and some different things like that. So that's been our protocol, and because we're certified organic and biodynamic, we have certain things we have to abide by.
Awesome. Thanks. Ben?
I didn't have to introduce myself. I'm Ben. I come to you in two capacities, one personal and one a little more of an official capacity. First off, 8 years ago, I had a younger brother that passed from cancer just a few days after his 27th birthday. And he'd been fighting it since he was 20. So while cannabis sativa helped him with his appetite and pain suppression and nausea, I don't think CBD was on his radar or any of these other cannabinoids that were on his radar or my parents' radar in Louisiana at that time. So if we believe that knowledge is power, I want to thank you all for empowering everybody in this room, and hopefully everyone who will spread this beyond this room, because it might save a lot of lives like my brother's. The other personal thing is I worked really hard to get you the greenest green room possible. And I know you didn't make it in there. This door was unlocked, but I dropped the ball on communicating. So go in and sit down at least for a second. In the official capacity, I'm privileged to serve on the board of directors for the Paradise Theater. So thank you, Paradise people and everyone who's working and volunteering today. Thank you, Loga. Thank you, Learning Council, for making this possible so that you could empower everybody. And I just wanted to give everybody some of these. Anybody in town's probably seen them around. They've been around for a few years, but this is a work of mine called Medicinal Harvest. It says, Paonia in Colorado's North Fork Valley is renowned for its fertile soil, perfect for all good things that grow. So I got one for everybody, including the moderator. And the request is if we could get a group photo with y'all and the whole audience, because I'm a photographer too. Maybe we can hashtag something clever and get this out there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We can take one or two more questions from the audience and we'll wrap it up.
I wanted to thank the panel here for their time. Thank you guys very much. Really informative. I learned a lot today, and thank you all also for coming. I'm very surprised at how many people are here. We're a water treatment company that's come to the valley here, and I didn't hear anybody talk about water treatment really. But we come from big ag. We do about 1 million acres in the Midwest. And I wanted to invite anyone that wants to come and talk to me about what we've discovered in advanced water treatment. So everyone's purifying water, but they're not dealing with the electric potential between hydrogen bonds. And this is what makes water work. This is what makes water efficient. What controls nitrogen runoff and agricultural runoff is due to suspension of minerals. We're not suspending minerals anymore because we're processing water in pipes and irrigation ditches. We're able to show considerable amount of plant growth. January we did a double study with Dr. McNeil out of Algona, Iowa. He's a famous agronomist in this country, and he showed 243% plant growth by just changing the water quality. So we were also able to show a reduction of additives and agricultural runoff down to 0. So, but if you guys are really interested in water quality, I brought this to the valley by world-renowned water specialists, and we're here. So if anybody's around and meets up with me afterwards, I'll be around. So,
what's the website?
We don't have a website yet. I actually have the licensing agreement to the technology. I got it about 12 years ago, and I've been doing residential work to get this back to the public. Now that cannabis is safer for us to get in as a technology company as of last year, so we've entered cannabis now. The name of the company is Growing Springs, and we don't have a website yet. But literally what we are just doing is just rebranding a international technology for cannabis. So it's been successful for about 20 years.
What is the technology?
The technology, what my partners did was they measured the movement of water and the resonance that affects the electric potential in its natural environment. So your cell has electric potential. It has a binary code. Water molecule also has a binary code. And that binary code communicates through electricity. Your cell and the water molecule, they communicate through electricity, not minerals or constituents, it's electricity. And when we process or harvest water, we kill that electricity, and thus it cannot communicate, and it's not efficient anymore. So the process is pretty simple. It's based on quantum physics. These guys are world-renowned. There's several hundred million into the technology. We have Nobel Peace Prize winners writing the technology for us. The paper were extremely published internationally. But the technology really is a non-electrical formula. We don't believe in electricity, but it's based on quantum physics directly. And it's just I don't know how you call it. It's not electric, let's put it that way, but we're showing incredible results internationally.
How do you do it naturally?
Naturally, you'd want to put it back into a riverbed. Well, we put it into a pipe that mimics a riverbed. They literally measured water in a riverbed and then replicated the riverbed inside of a pipe. So the water believes it's in a riverbed. So the quality of water we're getting now is mountain spring tap water out of a tap. And it's showing results for 20 years.
Great, thank you so much for sharing. Are there any, Krager, would you like to thank so much?
Just a quick question backing up. Question was for the animal feed potential for the hemp. I know the state is mentioned on the website that it's working on being able to provide it for dog food and animal feed. I was wondering if anybody knows anything about the market for dog food and CBD, because the CBD dog food companies are buying it. Karina is looking for it, and I was wondering how the state handles something like that, as far as maybe if it even tests a little hot, potentially it could go to animal feed. Is that a future possibility?
Not from the hemp program. That's not the way the hemp program works. The department did have an animal feed study, and there were a lot of people involved with that. That falls under Inspection and Consumer Services. You can read all about it at their webpage at the Department of Ag, Inspection and Consumer Services. The study completely just didn't deal with CBD at all. They just went completely for grain, for stocks, whatever, for animal feed. So, there's a lot of information out there. I think there's like 5 major points that came from the committee, the study. The best thing is to read what's there, because that's not what I deal with. I know a little bit about it, but I don't want to say the wrong thing. I know it's basically there's a lot of work from other countries for a long time that they're trying to use that data to push things through. But the Department of the federal government is going to have to be involved with that, because it falls under veterinarians and food additives, feed additives, and all that for cannabis itself. So it's good. I think they came away with wanting to hire some sort of lobbyist to push it at the federal level with some of its experience.
And I can't speak to the regulations, but in terms of animal feed, hemp seed is really extraordinary. The county grows a lot of corn, and there's a lot of soy used in livestock feed, and hemp seed could replace that, and so we could have sort of much healthier livestock, and that obviously gets into a whole different conversation about processing, and which isn't happening yet. And you know, I think that's a lot of what Carlo was after in the 90s, was getting the hemp seed into our livestock, and I think that's could potentially be an important aspect of hemp growing for our region. So thanks for the question, Krager. And so at this point, we're going to wrap it up. Really appreciate you all coming. I'm just totally astounded by our panel. What a wonderful group of people. So I've learned a lot tonight. This has been a wonderful experience, and our panelists are going to hang out for a few minutes down here. If you have some individual questions and you want to come down and ask them, please feel free. Reminder that we have an event coming up in 2 weeks with Lloyd Nelson, Regenerative Agriculture. So now that you've heard all the logistics of growing hemp, Lloyd can teach you how to take care of your farm and create fertility in your farm system. And then coming up at the end of March, we're hosting a seed school in a day. And so that'll be a really neat workshop. We're doing a local seed growers panel on Friday night, March 30th. And Seed School in a Day, we're joining with the Rocky Mountain Seed Alliance to offer a full-day workshop. So that also, in a way, pertains to growing hemp and selecting seed and growing for seed diversity. So that'll be a great workshop. We have, just to check up on our websites, vogaco.org is our VOGA website, and we're the Valley Organic Growers Association, and learningcouncil.org. And so we're working together to bring you a whole series of agricultural workshops. Again, we really appreciate everyone coming out tonight. This has been really wonderful, and so thank you so much, and please stick around. They'll all have their cards available, and they'll be up here to ask questions. So thank you so much, everyone.